Please help me welcome contestant number 1, Troy Obernolte.
In 1776, our nation declared independence, asserting to the world, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, that all men are created equal. However, from this declaration of equality, it took 93 years for universal manhood suffrage to be passed in 1869, and from there it took 51 years further for women's suffrage to be passed in 1920. Although since the founding of our nation we have taken great strides in terms of equality, the issue of sex still plagues sexism to this day. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines sexism as prejudice or discrimination based on sex, especially against women. While problems of sexism are very prevalent in our society, a very pertinent issue that I'd like to mention is the gender wage gap. This is the gap of 80 cents made by women for every dollar given to a man. While our capitalist society allows for a discrepancy of wage, it does this to incentivize growth, not encourage discrimination. In fact, in a capitalist society, negative things such as sexism actually damage the society as a whole, as well as the individual. By encouraging prejudice over merit, the entire society is damaged. This is clearly an issue that needs to be combated, but where can we start? As this issue is one of national precedence, many would look to Congress to be a forerunner to solve this. However, the roots of sexism are in society. The roots of it are in people, not policy. There is no law that could be passed that would effectively eliminate sexism, nor is there some program that we can allocate funds to remedy all of its ills. However, just to say that this is intangible and fluid isn't enough. We clearly need to solve it somewhere. So where do we begin? My answer to this question lies in the building block of the society, the individual itself. Through empowerment of the individual, we could start to rise above prejudice. My basis for this thinking lies in the same capitalistic society that I had mentioned before. This society thrives off of the idea of survival of the fittest. The fittest survive and the fittest thrive. Therefore, to overcome prejudice, we need to educate ourselves. We need to empower ourselves. We need to take advantage of opportunities. Only by doing this can we start to overcome prejudice. The National Center for Education Statistics said that 88% of people with bachelor's degree or higher are employed, compared to the 44% of high school educated individuals. It's clear that education is very necessary in our society for employment, but how can this be employed to help battle sexism? And the answer is in the empowerment of the individual. The individual needs to be educated. The individual needs to be empowered. The individual needs to take a stand. Only by empowering the individual and allowing the individual to rise can we start to battle this prejudice. A clear example of this lies in the glass ceiling. This is the idea that women in our society are discouraged from pursuing top-level careers and are, in most cases, not actually able to get those careers due to bias of sexism. The only way that we can start to shatter this glass ceiling is through empowerment of individuals, through education, through shining so brightly that one can no longer be ignored. Only by betterment of the self can we start to work past prejudice. The only way to break the glass ceiling is to shatter it with excellence. So, what can organizations such as AAUW do to help better this? And the answer is to provide an outlet for education, to provide resources. Through hosting competitions such as this, the AAUW does a lot for exploration of the self. It empowers the self and it encourages exploration of the world's issues. However, if we're to move forward in society, much more needs to be done. Organizations need to provide more outlets, more resources for the individual. Education, internships, jobs, community efforts, access to internet. The list goes on and on of what these organizations can do to help the individual. However, while there is responsibility in organizations to help the individual, to provide an outlet, more responsibility lies with the individual themselves to take responsibility for this. We live in a world of information, and we live in a world of technology. In my pocket, I have a smartphone. This means that at the touch of my fingertips, I have access to MIT OpenCourseware. I have access to Harvard lectures. I have access to even just the daily newspaper. According to the White House, 98% of Americans have access to internet. That means that 98% of Americans have access to this wealth of information. They have access to this pool of infinite knowledge. The responsibility lies with the self to take advantage of this, and the responsibility lies with the individual to start the empowerment of the self. In fact, in a study by the AAUW itself, it was shown that when jobs and education are taken into account, the gender wage gap shrinks to only 6.6 cents. We need to take advantage of these opportunities, and we need to provide more opportunities for the individual to enhance education and empower themselves. Although since its founding, our nation has taken great strides to try to enhance equality, we still have so far to go. We need to empower the self to realize the dreams of our founders. We need to enhance education to honor the reformers that have made our nation what it is today. Only through responsibility of the self and self-empowerment can we start to work towards a society that's built more on merit and not prejudice. Thank you.